The entire contents of this podcast and website are based upon the opinions of Tammy Garcia and her guests, unless otherwise noted. The information on this podcast is not intended to replace a one-on-one relationship with a qualified healthcare professional and is not intended as medical advice. It is intended as a sharing of knowledge and information from the research and experience of Tammy Garcia and her guests. This is the Naturally Inspired Podcast, coming to you from our 1890 homestead in Johnstown, Colorado. I'm Tammy, and I want to thank you for joining us. Let's get started and help people feel good so they can do what they love for longer. Today on the Naturally Inspired Podcast, we have Maria Boldry joining us again from Life Light Solutions in Greeley, Colorado. Maria has over 20 years of experience in alternative health care. She helps people with heart health, nutrition, emotional repatterning, and more. She's a wealth of information, and today we have her back on the podcast to talk specifically about heart health and what we can do to be proactive with our hearts. So, welcome Maria Boldry back to the Naturally Inspired Podcast. Thank you so much for being on the Naturally Inspired Podcast again, Maria Boldry.
Thank you for having me.
You're such a wealth of information. I really looked forward to having you back because I feel like with over 20 years of exposure, if you will, in the alternative health world, you worked for a chiropractor for quite a long time before you had your own practice. You've seen a lot of people.
I've seen a lot of people.
Yeah, seen a lot of people throughout the years. And so what I want to start off talking about today is the importance of why we want to start with the natural route. What is your feeling on that? Why don't we just take pills to fix these symptoms and be done with it?
Oh, so that easy.
Yeah.
Well, the dissertative research paper that I did when I was working on my ND is called God's Plan versus Man's Fix.
Great title.
The misunderstood healing potential of the human body. And that whole paper was, a portion of it was about how naturopathic medicine has been dumbed down, has been kind of taken out of all the schools. And it started very early on in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And I thought I was going to hate that part of the dissertative research paper because it was all about the history, which I'm not a huge history buff. But it was the most amazing thing to go back and really view how Dale Carnegie and Rockefeller and all of those really, because of their own interests, really pulled the natural health and healing modalities out of colleges.
Right. So you're saying like their business interests.
They had vested interest in the medical world as far as the new things that were coming out, like the X-ray machine. And pharmaceuticals. And so they went into these colleges and said, we will give you tons of money in exchange for not teaching anything natural.
Interesting. And even today, I know a lot of our nursing schools and medical programs are funded by pharmaceutical companies.
Yes. So it still plays out today.
Yeah.
And so we don't really, unless we investigate time into our own research or reading material that talks about it, we certainly aren't going to hear that from the medical world when we go see our primary care physician. They're not talking about the natural components of what you could add. And yet most of them partake, daily in some type of supplemental health, whether it be making smoothies in the morning or taking vitamin E if they're a cardiovascular surgeon, or, so all of them partake in something, but they're not allowed to share that information. So we as the consumer think that all of the preventative stuff is just stupid.
Right.
Dumb.
Hocus
Why are you
pocus.
wasting your money?
Right.
Hmm. Yeah.
Right.
And it's really it's a disservice to the community, the consumer,
Right.
because um, prevention with intention is really where it's at.
Oh, I
Um,
love that.
yeah, that's
Prevention with intention.
one of my products has the tagline prevention with intention, because
Yeah.
it's important that we be thinking about tomorrow's health.
Right.
I don't know who the author is, but I just read a little quip the other day on Facebook, and it said, if I knew I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself.
Right. I've heard that before.
Isn't that great? I don't know
Yes.
who it was, so I'm sorry I don't remember who the author of that was, but great line.
Yes.
Um, if I knew I was going to live this long, think about when we're 60, 70, 80. If I knew we
Right.
were going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. And that's really where it starts today. No matter where you're at in your health, is starting today to just make small changes. So when people come to me and they have this long list of symptoms,
Right.
I don't just put out tons of things and say, here, take this for 3 months and then come back and see me.
Right.
I narrow it down and say, we're going to do bite-sized pieces. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a
Right.
time.
Right.
First off, let's change your water. Second off, then when you've got that down pat, let's come back and let's talk about your vitamins and your minerals. And when you have that down pat, let's come back and talk about your lifestyle and your eating and what you're taking into your body. So
Right.
it's little things that you can do every single day that will make monumental changes 5, 10,
Right.
15 years down the road.
Right. That's so interesting because I did a post today kind of addressing this topic because I've had a few conversations over the last month or so where it's like, well, what don't I just take the pill? Why don't I just take the pill? This way I can eat whatever I want. I can do whatever I want and things will run smoothly in my body.
Right.
But that's not really how it works, is it?
No, it really isn't. And there's so many damaging things that can be going on underneath the surface. I wish we could just open ourselves up and see all the inner workings, like if we were a
Right.
watch and we could open ourselves up and see how the gears need the oil and how all of the inner workings need all that support, but we can't see it.
Right. So we have a huge disconnect between it.
We do, and we're not taught to listen to our body or to recognize the symptoms of how we're feeling. I think on our last podcast, one example that I think is just amazing is lactose intolerance. If you're lactose intolerant, you're deficient in potassium. That's one of the main minerals you're deficient in, because we need potassium to produce lactase, which then helps digest milk solids quickly and digest them so that we're not spewing them from one end or the other because we're lactose intolerant.
Right.
But that's just one little symptom that you can go, okay, I have this symptom. So now what am I missing?
Right.
That's making this symptom crop up. And just by taking a pill or some, Lactate or something like that, I'm missing out on the bigger picture if I'm not taking potassium.
Right.
Which is so critical for heart health. We're going to talk about that today.
Yes.
But if we just ignore all of those symptoms for the sake of the little blue pill, the little purple pill, the little orange pill, or whatever that comes with the really cute commercial, we're missing out on all of the other things that are going on in the inner workings of our body that may be coming to a halt, or maybe heading towards a disease state because we're missing one of the key elements that's causing that first symptom.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have to take responsibility for our own health too. Just because we can't blame it all on the medical model, because, a lot of people that are going through the education in the medical model, they're just doing what they've been trained to do.
Exactly.
Right? Which is help us feel better.
Yeah.
And I think what happens in a lot of times when we go see our medical professional, our typical one, is they think we won't do what we're supposed to do to get healthy.
Right.
So they think, oh, they won't lose weight. They won't change their diet. They won't exercise. They won't drink the water. They won't take the supplements they need to.
Right.
So I'm just going to write them a prescription because that's much easier. Right. So if we don't take responsibility for those things, then we really have no other choice but to take the prescription. True. So it's your choice whether you want to go down this road of being proactive with your health and taking the steps necessary, or if you're fine taking the prescription that may or may not have some side effects that you won't like further down the road.
Right. That's very well said. There we go. End the podcast right there. Because that kind of says it all in a nutshell. Is we have to do that. And the thing is, the information is so readily available now.
Yes, that's so great about the internet. I mean, you can really work with a functional medicine professional or a naturopath like yourself and work through these issues.
Right.
If you understand that this is detective work.
It is.
That's why I love it so much, because it really is detective work. You're kind of, trying this out, trying that out, and tweaking and listening to your symptoms, listening to your body, and then responding accordingly.
Right. Agreed. 100%.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk more about heart health. This is actually a really high in demand topic. When I polled my audience, there was a lot of concern. I think fear. There's lots of fear around heart health, and a few misconceptions too that I hope we'll get into today, and just try to ease people's fear and get more into what it means to have a healthy heart.
Right. Well, it's a very, very broad topic. So we'll try to keep it super
Chunk it down
a little bit. It's interesting, just a couple of statistics. And this is so hard to wrap your brain around, that we have 100,000 miles of vessels in our system. If we were to lay them out end to end, 100,000 miles.
Yeah.
It's just mind-boggling to think about that.
Yeah.
But that's the system that feeds every cell. So if that system breaks down anywhere, then we have the potential of disease state. So
lots of places to go wrong.
Absolutely, because there's congestion, and inflammation is the number one inhibitor of that system working. So if we all have congestion, we all have inflammation. We're not going to get away from it. It's how do we deal with it, and how effective are we dealing with it?
Right.
But we all have it. So there's going to be areas within us all that have some type of congestion or inflammation. Right. The other statistic when I was pulling ideas together was the heart pumps approximately 1 million barrels of blood in an average lifespan.
That's a lot of work.
When you think about your heart is this big, pumping 1 million barrels in a lifetime. So this muscle that we have that runs us is super, super, super important. And it's just,
we don't function without it.
We don't function without it. No, we don't. When I talk to people about heart, and we do a lot here in our office, not from a cardiovascular standpoint as far as the medical, but just guide people into how can I help my heart better.
Right.
We have a digital pulse. Right. We have a digital pulse wave analyzer that you just put a finger probe on, and within a minute's time, it can tell you the elasticity of your veins and arteries and the age of your heart.
Wow, that's
it's hard to get people to come in and do that because it's scary. It's scary you have to kind of entice people and say, it's nice to know where you are. Right. And if there were some natural substances that you could start taking in daily that could reverse the process, so reverse wherever you're at, wherever your starting place is, right. If it could help you start reversing that process so that you can become healthier, wouldn't that be something you would want to know? And
so those are two characteristics you mentioned there. So elasticity and what else?
Elasticity and
of your arteries.
And the age of your heart.
Okay, so it actually measures that by
looking at the pulse wave and the readout you get. We can sort of determine where are you at. There's a in the readout it's called a dicrotic notch that shows in your heart rhythm that shows a youthful heart, shows that the aorta is very elastic in it, and if it's not there, then we know that the heart's a little bit more older, that just meaning that it doesn't have the response that it used to. Now, what's interesting, there are definitely some different supplements, nutritive qualities that we can bring in from our diet that will assist the heart and its conductivity and it's the elasticity of the actual heart muscle. So that's sort of different than the veins and arteries because they're super affected by blood pressure. So I kind of, when people come in, I try to explain what is plaquing.
Yes.
And why does it happen?
Right.
And once you understand that, it makes it so much easier to digest. Why should I take something daily for prevention, which is what you wanted to kind of touch on, is the preventative aspect.
Yeah.
So when someone comes in, I'll ask.
So are those two separate things? Sorry, but are those two separate things? We're talked about inflammation. So you have inflammation going on one hand,
right?
But then you have blockage with plaque, which is another issue.
Right.
And the two combine we get into trouble.
And the inflammation is really the precursor.
Okay.
To all of it.
Okay.
So I don't know if I've got this. I'm just going to do a little anatomy class. Okay?
Great.
So if I put this up,
I love that.
So this is obviously huge, but this is the inside of a vein or an artery.
Okay.
And there's a 1 cell thick wall called the endothelial lining.
Okay.
Okay. Those are the cells that produce the nitric oxide that expands the vessel from the inside out when we need better blood flow in times of stress, perceived or real, right?
Okay, yeah.
So anytime there's any type of stress.
Is that triggered by a hormone then? What makes that expand? Or
yeah, everything in the endocrine system is, because your adrenals then, so the adrenals, the thyroid, all of that is part of the mechanism that gets our heart beating faster.
Got it.
4 times of perceived or real stress.
Okay.
So this 1 cell thick lining is really what runs the dilation. What's interesting is back in 1998, Dr. Ignaro and his research team, Dr. Louis Ignaro and his research team, they won a Nobel Prize for what could lead to the reversal of heart disease.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
1998. He discovered the nitric oxide molecule, which is the dilation factor.
Okay.
And again, talking about the pharmaceutical companies and tapping down really good health information, the pharmaceutical companies took all of that information from the research team about vasodilation and they created Viagra.
Oh.
Because it was about vasodilation.
So it wasn't for the intention of ED in the first place?
No. So Dr. Ignaro and his research team really kind of found the cure for heart disease. And it got turned into Viagra. So now we have 4-hour erections in place of the cure for the #1 killer in America.
Wow.
Yeah. So his part of what they did in the research team was to find healthy ways to allow this endothelial lining to keep producing more nitric oxide and make it more readily available.
Okay.
And part of their discovery was in some of those elements of nutrition, it would actually make that endothelial lining a little bit more impervious to high blood pressure.
Got it.
So let me explain what happens with that, because that's all part of it. So you have this.
Right. Because blood pressure is, that's that stroke and heart disease. They're kind of intertwined, right? You can't it all goes together.
It all goes together.
Okay.
So this 1 cell lining, 1 cell thick lining, what we don't see is we don't see the pressure on the outside of the vessel.
Right.
So we have pressure on the outside of the vessels, and then the vessel is dilating from the inside out to accommodate stress. Okay. What's supposed to happen is those veins and arteries are supposed to be nice and flexible. So as they vasodilate, but if we have inflammation or congestion in the interstitial fluid around the vessels, then it puts pressure on the vessel wall.
Right.
And then it's trying to dilate from the inside out. That's blood pressure.
Okay. That's a great description.
Okay. So in this picture, if you can see it, you can see there's that same vessel. So when we have blood pressure, when we have that pressure on the outside, then there's the potential, since that's only a 1-cell thick lining, of platelets or blood cells nicking one of those endothelial cells and creating a little wound.
Right.
Okay. If we did that on our hand, if we had a wound on our hand, we would change the environment. We would put Neosporin on it.
Yeah.
We would put a Band-Aid on it. We wouldn't
Apply
bump it.
pressure.
Yeah, we would change everything about the environment for that wound. But since we can't see what's going on inside,
yes,
and we don't know to change it, we don't.
Right.
So that pressure just continues. And then the body, being so smart in its wisdom, sends cholesterol as a Band-Aid.
Oh, that was my next question.
Yes.
What?
So the body sends cholesterol to just smooth over that wound, to try to heal it.
And what is it that's causing those little wounds?
Blood platelets, the white blood cells, the red blood cells. If there's pressure on the outside and the vessel is trying to dilate from the inside, it's kind of like putting your thumb on the end of a hose. You know how the pressure in the hose builds up, right? So the water actually has more force.
Right.
Okay? Because of that, then the platelets can actually nick the
spraying out.
Well, they nick the lining inside of the vessel, and creates that little interior wound.
Okay.
So that's kind of what that picture is supposed to denote.
So it's almost like springing a leak?
Well, it doesn't come outside the vessel. It literally just causes a wound in the interior lining.
Okay.
Can bleed, definitely.
Yeah, I was going to ask. So,
but the body then sends cholesterol to just lay over the top.
Smooth it out.
Has its own Band-Aid. Okay.
Wow.
So we need cholesterol. Our brain is 94% cholesterol. We need cholesterol.
Yes.
Okay. So the body in its infinite wisdom is always trying to fix little wounds.
Right.
Inside.
Constantly working for your healing.
Right.
Yep.
I had another picture here that was really good. I think it's from this is another one that's kind of gives you an idea where it's normal and then it's just a gradual filling up. What happens is some of that cholesterol is laid inside the vessel.
Okay.
And then when you look at the bottom of the ocean, you know how the sand creates the waves create the little ripples in the sand, and that's an ever-changing dynamic
pattern, right? Yep.
Okay, so if there's some cholesterol in the vessel, right, then during times of pressure or stress,
right,
and because we haven't changed the environment around the vessel, there's still pressure. That blood actually has to go faster up, but it might come down and nick the endothelial lining on the other side because there's the physics dynamics, right? So then you have this long line of cholesterol buildup because it's just started with one nick and then it just keeps going. But the body keeps sending cholesterol because it's just like, oh, I'm just going to fix the wound. I'm just going to fix the wound. I'm just going to
doing what it's supposed to do.
Doing what it's supposed to do. But we, not knowing that it's doing that, we haven't changed anything about the terrain or the environment within our body to create a less stressful, less pressure, less strenuous situation. So all of our vessels are still under all of this pressure to perform with the presence of inflammation and congestion.
Which is like disastrous.
So I watched a YouTube video of them actually taking out some plaque from a carotid artery. And they just were removing it. And it was long. And
I've seen that.
Yeah. And so that's literally what happens. But it's a balancing thing. The body's just trying to create balance and trying to heal. And it's doing that for us to our own detriment. Because we're not listening or educated on what we need to do to make sure that doesn't have to happen.
Which is what this is what we're all about, is trying to be proactive with our health. Because once we get into these, emergency type situations, then it's pretty hard to turn the clock back as fast as we need it to.
It is. Yes. Once that's started, it can definitely be reversed. And it certainly is nice to know, that you're in the early stages of it. So that's
Right.
why when people come in for the DPA scan or the
Yeah,
digital
so
pulse wave,
helpful.
I'm explaining all this going, let's just, wherever you're at, let's start there and let's
Yes.
start the reversal process from here.
Right.
So
So how does diet affect this? I know you mentioned before on our last podcast about acidic diet
yeah,
and how we can make changes, just today, really.
right.
I mean, someone comes into your office for this test and, they get a reading that's not so great. What are you going to tell them when they're done? Where do they start first? I know it's like eating an elephant. You said you got to chunk it down, but what
Right.
is your first place that you like to start?
Well, mostly I say, let's at least get you on the products that start eating away slowly at that cholesterol buildup so that your veins and arteries can start to have some flexibility again.
Right.
And then the other part of that is making sure that they're recognizing what an acidic and alkaline diet really is.
Yeah.
And that we need to be, I mean, our body is so balanced with nature, 7.0 being, base between
Right.
0 and 14.
Right.
But our blood is susceptible to getting thick and the viscosity
Yeah.
changing into that thick, sticky, right?
Yeah.
But that's,
I like to refer to like a stagnant pond, right? I
yes,
mean, if our body's not, if things aren't, whirling around and kind of being shook up and
right.
moving smoothly, then it's almost like we've got a stagnant pond situation going on.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And that's just putting the potential out there for more inflammatory pressure. But really what thick and sticky blood implies is that we're mineral deficient, is that we're vitamin and
Ah.
mineral deficient, because those are the things that give us the alkalinity in our diet. The
Mm.
grains and the meats and the dairy are all acidifying.
Acidic.
Hmm. And if
Mm-hmm.
you look at our country, if we were to ask how many people eat, 80% of their plate is greens and
Yeah.
vegetables, and how much of their plate is the other. We're
Brown or
supposed to
beige
have,
or gray.
yeah, we're supposed to have 80% fruits and
Right.
vegetables, and
Right.
then the 20% divided between grains, dairy, and meat. But in
Right.
this country, we're completely opposite.
Opposite.
We have the taco, we have the grain and the meat, and then we have this little bitty shredded lettuce on the top, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's America. That's
Right.
pretty much in everything we eat. So
Right.
we're completely opposite. So we're bent on getting an acidic diet in, which
Right.
is the reason why we're a fifth of the world's population taking 95% of the world's prescription meds.
Wow.
Yeah. We,
95% of the world's prescription meds.
We are the United States is
Wow.
1/5 of the world's population. So 1/5 of the population takes
Wow.
95% of the world's prescription meds,
Wow.
right?
And how much of that do you think, I mean, how much do you think of that is preventable with just diet and
Oh,
movement?
100%. In this
Yeah.
country, a little harder because there's so many chemicals that create
Yes.
that acidity.
That's
So
another variable that we have to work with.
it's something we have to deal
Yeah.
with in this country. I've had clients that come in and they can't, they're highly inflamed to everything about American food. One in particular I'm thinking about, she moved to Costa Rica and she can eat everything. She doesn't have the same
Interesting.
reactions. She doesn't inflame the same way.
Yep.
She just can eat everything, but she comes back to this country and tries to eat clean and just can't because she's so susceptible to the
Chemicals or
herbicides, the
dyes or
pesticides,
yeah.
the Roundup, the whatever is on our food. Yeah.
Yep. And that's
Even
interesting because we've talked about it a couple other times on the podcast, how some of these additives, chemicals, dyes are actually illegal in other countries,
mhm, yep,
and I think
so true.
that's worth mentioning again, even though we've mentioned it on our podcast several times, because I think people aren't aware of that,
Right. Well,
so much of it.
and even here, when you think about the foods that we have in our refrigerator, you go buy a bag of chopped up lettuce because that's much easier. And it's not like I haven't bought bag salad before,
Yeah.
but they are sprayed with bleach and all other kinds of things so they don't turn
Right.
brown. Because what
Right.
happens when you cut a head of lettuce in half and put it in your fridge?
Pretty fast.
Pretty
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
So even when you think you're eating healthy and eating right in this country, you're still being exposed to tons of chemicals that you certainly wouldn't pour bleach on your lettuce before you ate it.
No, or it irradiated too.
Or radiated.
A lot of our food is radiated.
Exactly.
So that takes away from the nutrients in it and other things.
So it makes sense why we are the number one killer is heart disease.
Yeah.
You know? When you have 100,000 miles of vessels that need tender loving care and they need a very alkaline diet, and we're giving it a very acidic diet with tons of chemicals, and we have tons of inflammation, and then that then leads into a stagnant, apathetic life where you really just like, I don't really want to get off the couch right now and go exercise, you know? So it's important to start and take baby steps so that you can start getting there.
Right. So you mentioned getting in the right minerals and the right, you know, products that can help you start kind of eating away at that plaque. Can you explain more about that?
Yeah. So the Cardio for Life, I put them over here so I'd have easy reach. The Cardio for Life is the one, I've personally been taking this for about 9 years. What I love is I just saw my endocrinologist a little while ago, and she's also a cardiologist. And so she wanted me to bring everything that I was taking, and this was one of them. So I just brought the canister to her, and she started looking at everything, and she said, wow, this is a really good product. And I said, yeah, I really like it. It's easy. It's a powder. You just mix it up in the morning and drink it. And she said, you should continue taking this. She said, this is a really good. So coming from a cardiologist, I was like, oh, that's great. Now there's a lot of products that you can take for your heart, even just hawthorn berry as an herb. You can, change the dynamics of how your heart is functioning. But this is the one specifically that was formulated to go along with Dr. Ignaro's Nobel Prize winning research about changing the health of the endothelial lining so that it could change the dynamics of the vessels, but then also has the B vitamins, the CoQ10, it has the omegas, it has a lot of the other nutrition in there that's needed to change the pressure on the outside of the vessels.
Right.
So it's just a really nice, so that's one particular that we have in our clinic here, but there are so many different cardiovascular products out there. You just have to just sort of research.
Absolutely. And I love that you can do that on your own even now, right?
Yep.
I know niacin is a really powerful thing that you can take for heart health too.
All of the Bs are huge for heart health. If you talk to a veterinarian, this is so interesting, but canine heart health and human health are somewhat similar.
Yeah.
But if you talk to a veterinarian, actually, if you go to veterinarian sites about canine heart health, you can find out so much more than you ever could researching heart health about humans.
Right.
And yet they're so similar. And the B vitamins, the vitamin C, the vitamin E, all of those things that they would put a dog on for heart health, even though they don't manifest in the same way, heart conditions don't manifest in the same way with dogs, but the nutrition is the same.
Right. Well, because it boils down to deficiency, right?
Absolutely. 100%.
And if we're not, I can't stress that enough. Like if you're not getting the nutrients from your food, where do you think you're getting it?
Right. And a lot of people just think, oh, I'm eating it and it's passing my stomach. And so therefore I'm eating I'm eating well. But really it's what happens after the stomach, after the food is broken down and reaches the small intestine. And
are you absorbing
it? Yep.
Right. Which is another big issue because we have so many issues with gut health.
Right. Did we talk about that on our last podcast?
Yeah, we did talk, and we have touched quite a bit on gut health, but I think that's important to mention when it comes to your heart health too, because you can't just take a bunch of stuff and assume that you're absorbing it. And I think this is where people get confused messaging when it comes to supplementation, because they take things and they don't work for them. Either they're not taking enough, right? We've talked about that before, how the RDA dosage, the recommended daily dosage is not quite right.
Doesn't fit our parameter. Doesn't fit us.
Doesn't fit our parameter, right?
We're not in that model.
Right.
Right.
And in addition to that, there's this absorption factor.
Right.
Whether what is the integrity of your gut?
Exactly.
And so it can be difficult because when we take drugs, we get an immediate response.
Right.
Right? The symptom goes away.
Right.
When we're dealing with our health issues through nutrition and supplementation and more natural things,
Right.
we have to play that game a little bit of what problem came first. Right? Was it the gut health that started before that you weren't able to absorb nutrients and that's why you've got a heart issue now?
Right.
Or is it, the heart issue came first? Like it's this kind of game that you're playing to kind of detective work to figure out what came first.
So
and
true.
that's, people need to kind of like broaden their perspective when it comes to natural health, that you are going to need to apply other tactics to kind of manage your symptoms while you wait out this program that you're going to dedicate to achieve your optimum health and reverse things.
Agreed. And you're going to have to look at, are you in a place in your life where you're so stressed out, whether it be work, relationship, whatever, that you're going to continually be sort of undermining the new habits that you're bringing in? Are you just sort of keeping yourself at status quo again? Or are you actually raising health, or are you undermining it with all of the stress?
Right. So much of what I've learned through doing the podcast has just all come back to the fact that our body is a system.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, we are programmed as we're, growing up and whatnot, that if you have like a knee problem, it's a knee problem. If you have an elbow problem, it's an elbow problem. Right? You have a brain problem, it's a brain problem. And that really couldn't be further from the truth.
Right.
It's
because a heart
systematic.
Right. Because a heart problem is, we talked about a gut problem first, but then it's also a liver and a kidney problem.
Oh, yeah.
They all go hand in hand. We're talking about filtering the blood.
Right.
The
stagnant pond. If your
pond.
kidneys aren't working properly and your liver's not working properly, then your heart's not pumping and jiggling things around and keeping things moving fast.
That's it. That's it. And you're stagnant, emotionally too, which makes you not maybe want to get up and, go do some stair stepping.
Right.
We all go through different, stages of that where I don't want to do anything today. But for many people, it's a consistent and it's a constant, because their health just doesn't allow them to have vitality.
Right. And that's so important to remember with age as well, because we're told that we slow down with age. Well, are we really slowing down with age, or did we make a mental note that I don't need to do this anymore because I'm getting older? I can't run races anymore because I'm getting older. Well, I'm getting older, so I'm not going to play football anymore, or I'm not going to. So which is it really? Is it that we have a mindset that we should be slowing down, or is our body really slowing down?
Yeah. And I think it's both, because of where we're at environmentally, what we put ourselves in. And it's the norm. It's the societal norm to think I'm older, so therefore I can't do that.
Right.
It's interesting, on the DPA scan, the digital pulse wave scan that we do, it measures the elasticity, and it gives you a reading of A to G. And I've never seen an A.
I want to come try it.
You should. It's free all this month. Anybody that's in our area, DPA scans are free this month. Just come in and check it out. But my 17-year-old son,
what a great tool.
My son, when he was 17, he did the pulse wave, and he scored a B.
Wow.
Which is the veins and arteries of a 30 to 40-year-old.
Wow.
So I said to him, so what does that say to you? And he said, that means I probably should give up pop and the junk food I've been eating. And I said, yeah, it's creating an acidic environment. So therefore that elasticity isn't there like it should be. Yeah.
So nothing to do with age.
No.
Right? It was environment.
No, in fact, we did a high school. This was many years ago, but we did a high school in Fort Collins, and we did the digital pulse wave analyzer on 100 kids.
Wow.
Okay.
Interesting.
And a very small percent, 10, maybe 20% were Bs. Most of them were Cs and Ds, which is showing some type of inflexibility or stiffness in the main vessels of the body.
As a teenager.
And then I have clients that are 60 or 70, and they'll score like a DEF, which is, going into that. They'll say, oh, well, I'm 73, so that fits. I said, no, I want you to be 73 and have the veins and arteries of a 30-year-old.
Right. And it's possible.
Yeah, let's shoot for a B. let's shoot
Right.
for a B. So when my husband first did the scan, he's registered as a D.
Okay.
And so he started taking the Cardio for Life, and within 5 weeks, he was back to a B. So
5 weeks.
doesn't take long at all.
Wow.
Doesn't take
Well,
long at all.
that doesn't surprise me at all because, as we've said before, your body wants to heal.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Your body wants oxygen. Your body wants nutrients. We just need the cardiovascular system to deliver it. And if the cardiovascular system isn't being taken care of, we know there's going to be degradation, into disease.
Right. So this may be a little bit off topic, but how do you feel about this keto fad?
Oh
Right?
boy.
Because people are almost afraid of fruit right now.
Yeah.
Right. And if you eat so much, if you don't, even if you eat too many vegetables, you can get kicked out of ketosis, right?
Right. So ketones is brain food, and it's good. Your body actually utilizes fat as a burning mechanism more efficiently than glucose.
Right.
Glucose it's an unclean fuel. So
Right.
it leaves some ash residue. However, our body has the capability to clean that up.
Okay.
So the keto diet by itself can be very acidifying.
Okay.
Okay. So when we look at long term, we don't know the ramifications of this keto craze.
Okay.
10, 15
It's not been
years.
long enough yet for
It's
any
not been long
real,
enough.
yeah.
And there are very mass amount of the population that doesn't do well with that high of a protein, low carbohydrate. Right. So for instance, when we did the hair analysis for me, which we do in the office too, to help with find out what is inflammatory to your system. I'm an O blood type, so I should be able to eat all the proteins, and keto should work fine for me.
Right.
I would gain weight on it. I would feel swollen. It was not good.
Right.
And when I did the hair analysis, I found out that beef and chicken were probably two of the most inflammatory things I could eat. Beef, shrimp, and chicken. Yeah.
Interesting.
And iceberg lettuce, which I thought was so interesting. Yeah.
So sorry, I'm going to stop you right there, but can you explain a little bit about the hair analysis?
Yeah, sure.
What is that doing? And tell me all about everything you know about that.
Okay. So you can do blood analysis to find out what you inflame against. And it's basically about intolerances and sensitivities, not allergies. Allergies are different. This is more about what you're sensitive to or what you're intolerant to. So you can do hair analysis and you can do blood. The blood tests are pretty expensive. The hair analysis is less expensive. I've done both, and my findings or my results were very, very similar. So we just do hair analysis here in the clinic because it's easier to pluck 5 or 6 hairs than it is to go in for a blood test, and it's a lot less expensive.
Right.
But what it'll do is it'll show you what foods you are mildly, moderately, and severely intolerant to as far as inflammation.
Okay.
And so then what I do is I take that information and I combine it with your blood type on what foods enzymatically you should be able to handle. And then I come up with a list of foods that are good for you. So in my menopausal world of gaining weight during menopause, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Last year, towards the end of last year into this year, I've been able to just drop 20 pounds by eating foods that are on my new list.
Interesting.
So changing to romaine instead of iceberg.
Right.
So eliminating beef.
When you say enzymatics, like our enzymes, so are those distinctive to us individually, our enzyme makeup?
By our blood type. Peter D'Adamo's book, Eat Right for Your Type.
Yep, I've heard of it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That is about mostly what your blood type is capable of producing enzymatically to break down foods.
I see.
So we're all still a little different, even though I'm an O blood type, and O's and A's I think are the most popular or the largest percentage of blood types in America. But even within that group, there's still so many variances. So that's why the hair analysis is nice, because you can really start pinpointing.
Dial it in.
What things are not good, even down to different types of apples, and everything. So it does sound like that's, oh my gosh, I could never do that. But when you have this long list of foods that you know you can eat and you're not going to inflame to them, and they're good for your blood type, so enzymatically they're sound.
Yeah.
I've lost weight eating white rice, which I never would have eaten
Right.
that.
Our instinct is like,
in the
no.
in the keto world, you would never have white
Right.
rice, right?
Gasp. Yeah.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that we look more to specifically what each individual body needs. And I
Absolutely.
think what this brought to light for me was that there isn't a plan out there.
Yeah.
There just isn't. There
Right.
is an individual that has
Right.
individual chemistry,
Right.
and my body utilizes food individually. So I need to find out what is my list,
Right.
kind of the you diet.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I couldn't
Mhm.
agree more. And so what are some symptoms that we could look for as far as like, how do we know if we're inflaming to foods? You mentioned that you felt like, you were swollen maybe.
Yep.
What other kinds of things can we be,
Well,
aware of?
headaches for me, and head pressure, occiput pressure, frontal lobe pressure, that was one of the biggest things. That was one of the first changes that I noticed, was
Okay.
that I was waking up and going through my day without a headache.
Interesting.
And I
Okay.
was shocked, because that was something that I always felt it was just like this level of stress that I was going to know. It was that the cranium can't stretch. So when there's inflammation throughout the
Got it.
body, and I must be predisposed to having some inflammation in the brain tissue, which then, the cranium can't stretch like your ankles can.
Right.
So therefore I was having headaches quite a bit. So that was one of the first things I noticed.
Okay.
Now, since I've been dealing with, the cardio stuff, I have the wrist blood pressure cuff.
Okay.
This has been interesting, because when I eat something that I think might I've
Have
had a
affected you,
reaction
but
to,
yeah.
my blood pressure's up.
Ah,
So I've been using this as a tool, not so much blood sugar, but blood pressure. That's been fairly new for me. Just, figuring out
yeah.
if I eat carbohydrates that aren't good for me the night before, the next
Hmm.
morning, my blood pressure is going to be up. So I'm going to be able to sort of document, and then it
Right.
helps you make that mental shift of, oh, now I know what's going on inside of me.
Right.
Because
Right.
if you just wake up with a headache, you might
Right.
just
You're
think,
not
oh,
connecting it.
yeah, you might
Yeah.
think, oh, I just slept wrong on my pillow or
Right.
whatever. You're not connecting it to what you ingested the night before or the day
Right.
before.
Absolutely. And I think a food diary is a great place to start as well when it comes to,
Absolutely.
trying to narrow down. I always say, go to the doctor, get some tests done, get a diagnosis,
Right,
and then take some time
right,
to see what you can do about it.
right,
Right. And
right.
a food diary is such a great place to start, because if you start documenting for a week and you see a trend,
Mm-hmm.
how easy is it to eliminate a food?
Right. And the other part of that, which I found out, is that you can eat a food today and not have any inflammatory markers in your body for 72 hours.
Really?
So that makes it even more, that makes it harder to discern
Yeah.
what we're eating and how, because you think about, we've got that period of digestion and absorption until it
Right.
gets out to the cell, how it's going to inflame.
Right.
So we were talking earlier about how a lot of people just want to take a pill and
Yes.
it's better, and to not think about it.
Yeah.
And I agree with that from the standpoint of ease, because all of us are in this microwave diet or microwave society where we want everything so quick and easy.
Yes.
But if we could just do a couple of little things aside from the pill, a couple of little things to start making the difference, I think that's one of the other things we talked about. It was just taking baby steps, just start drinking better water, more alkaline water, to hopefully counteract some of the acidic foods you might be eating that you haven't decided you wanted to let go of yet.
Right.
And
Can
then
you
maybe
talk a
do,
little bit about alkalinity in water? I've heard all kinds of things about
yeah,
that. Some of the ones that you buy in the store or whatever, they, oh no, it's not, or like, how
it's
do we
hard.
know?
It's
Yeah.
hard. It's become very complicated. The simplicity of it, if we can just narrow it down, is when we eat alkaline foods
Hmm.
or drink alkaline substances,
Yes.
our body will produce its own sodium bicarbonate,
Okay.
and introduce it to the blood system,
Okay.
which changes the viscosity. So now we have blood that is running easier,
Right.
right?
Smoother.
Okay. Not as clotty. It's not as
Right.
thick and sticky. So we have this natural reaction in our body when we bring alkaline foods in. When we bring acidic foods in or acidic drink in, whether it be soda pop or just Aquafina, for instance,
Right.
when we bring that into our system, our body doesn't produce that.
Got it.
So now we have this really acidic state and the blood starts to get sticky.
So instead of absorbing the alkalinity and kind of building up the environment to an alkaline environment, you're working against your body, and it's
Right.
having to break it down, so to speak, and
Right.
that your alkalinity then becomes diluted with acidity.
Right. Well, and it becomes tacky and sticky and
Right.
it just doesn't function well. It's like the pond. It's,
Yeah.
it's like the pond. It's a stagnant pond.
Yeah.
So since we have a mechanism in our body that responds to alkaline substances,
Mm-hmm.
then not only are we getting better nutrition in those foods, because it's the green leafies and the vegetables and the fruits that provide a lot of that alkalinity.
Right.
So not only are we getting the benefit of the vitamins and minerals coming from that, but also we're activating our own mechanism to change the viscosity of our blood.
Right.
Right, and decrease it. So we
Right.
have more freedom, more flow.
Right.
And so that's kind of if we can think of it that way, we'll be more inclined to, have the least amount of foods on our plate be,
Right.
the meats and the grains.
Yeah.
And the dairy.
And that mind and visual picture connection, like we talked about earlier, we have such a disconnect with our bodies. We don't
Yeah.
see inside our bodies. So we don't see our hearts clogging up. We
That's
don't
right.
see the stagnant pond inside of here.
That's right.
So if we can create a mind picture
Mm-hmm.
that associates these acidic foods like pop and processed foods, anything
Right.
that comes in a box, you can
Right.
guarantee that's acidic.
Right.
So if we can build a mind picture connection to that,
Right.
then it becomes almost like you wanna avoid that, because instead of seeing this, delicious Coca-Cola or pop or whatever it is,
Right.
you're now seeing, my heart
Right.
and this stagnant pond
Right.
visual inside.
I had heard a nutrition guru, don't remember his name, it was years ago, but he said, go ahead and have pizza, but cut it up and put it on top of a salad. And I thought, that's the way to look at it, is look at all of those foods as a condiment to the foods that are super alkaline, so that you're creating balance in your system. Plus you're engaging your own mechanism to allow your blood to stay in a nice flowing thin state and not be sticky. Yeah.
Right. So that 80% again, right? You're coming back to that 80% of alkaline foods.
And it's super easy to find that online just Google alkaline foods.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to find a list, tons of lists,
right,
that show you what you should eat and what you shouldn't, what you should focus on and what you should have in the background.
Right.
Yeah.
How long does the hair analysis take?
When I get it sent in, usually I have results within 10 to 14 days.
Okay.
And then if we add the blood typing to it, you either have to know your blood type, or I have a kit that you can find out what your blood type is. Many people don't know, but you should know what your blood type is. And then that takes an extra 2 or 3 days. So within 2 weeks, 14 to 18 days, you have your menu of what is most helpful, what could be most beneficial for you to focus on eating.
Right.
Yeah.
So to kind of wrap up and come back to our heart health and whatnot, what are like, say, 3 things that people could do if, they are concerned, maybe they have some family history, and I know, that doesn't determine our outcome by any means, but maybe it's a concern for you. You have, the same environment as your family has. So now this has kind of become an issue for you as well.
Right.
What are 3 things that you would have someone do preventatively? What's a healthy heart life now in a keto world?
Right. In the keto world. Well, the first thing that I would do, because we're looking at inflammation,
Right.
is what I just got recently, which is, spend the 50 to $60 on a nice blood pressure wrist cuff,
Cuff.
and
Okay.
start just documenting where you're at.
Yeah.
Okay. The next thing would be to either find some, like come and get a DPA scan, or find out, where
Do
do
a
I need to start?
diagnostic tool.
Just something, find
Yeah.
something, and try not to be scared about it, because there is a really nice, resolution to that, where we can start, reversing that process.
Right.
Get on, a product like Cardio for Life. There's a lot of them out there.
Yeah.
Get on something like that will assist your cardiovascular system in starting to create a normalcy, come back to a balance again.
Right.
And then hydration, hydration, hydration. So better water, higher pH water.
Right.
You asked a question a little bit about what do I buy at the store?
Yeah.
We probably need to do a podcast where we
Just
get all
on
the
that.
water bottles, and we show which one is pH,
No
which one is
kidding.
high pH.
Well, and there's spring water, and there's all this, like, I can't remember, but I remember at some point I was looking at the verbiage of water,
Right.
and how spring water really isn't anything, but tap water or something, or
Right.
maybe
Well,
it's vice versa. I can't remember which one it is, but
right. What you really want to make sure is that on the label, it doesn't say like made and bottled in, Chicago municipal water supply, something like that. Because,
right.
when you look at some of those labels, they're just bottled water from another city, right?
Yeah.
So you want to look at bottles that don't have the crinkles in them.
Okay.
So here's an interesting thing. Like Aquafina, how it has the crinkles. Well, those crinkles are there so that the bottle can expand under heat. So
Heat
not
is
only are they not putting the greatest water in the bottle, but now they're heat treating it in the bottle, which creates then a plastic issue.
Right. Leaching into the water.
Yeah. So the Fiji bottles, the smart water, not the smart water, the Life water, the Essentia waters, they're all in pretty solid bottles that can't expand.
Okay.
And so a lot of those are your better choices. There are some filtration systems. The one we sell is the Life Ionizer. That one changes the pH in the water, but you can buy water sticks that change the pH. Really what you're looking for is better mineralized water. I don't mean the bubbles. I don't mean mineral water. Better mineralized water. The other thing you can do is just have better water that, you're putting your own minerals in, whether it be a powder. I mean, this is one of my favorites now. I just get it on Amazon. Or whether it's a liquid, something, or the plant-based minerals, something where you can just start adding better nutrition in your water.
Right.
Now that I'm going through menopause, I'm rarely drinking just plain water. I have an electrolyte blend or something that I'm putting in, because I recognize that as your hormones start to decline, the ability to hang on to minerals declines too.
Right.
And so for talking about cardiovascular health in women, the need for potassium is so high. But when our estrogen and our progesterone starts to wane, so does our potassium. And so that's why heart disease in menopausal women becomes the number one killer.
Right. Because we're a system.
We're a system, and we need the sodium potassium to create that pump. And so rarely do I just drink plain water anymore. I always have something in it, an electrolyte blend of something, or a mineral blend, fulvic minerals. So you just start researching on your own what you need for you based on your symptoms. And, we talked about magnesium for the heart, because it calms the heart muscle. So that's huge. It creates more conductivity so that the heart gets better messaging.
Absolutely.
So those are the things I would look at, is start monitoring, find a diagnostic tool that you're not scared to do.
Right.
And then just start adding little bits of things, changing the water, adding minerals in, adding better B vitamins, or just adding B vitamins in, vitamin C, just adding some of the basic antioxidants in that will help heal that endothelial lining.
That's great advice. And then the other thing, what about lifestyle? Like we talked about stress, right?
Yes.
And if you're doing all this, stuff like adding minerals into your regimen, and you're doing everything that you just mentioned, but you're not taking care of the stress part of your life,
Yeah.
It's futile, right?
It really is. I mean, and that's, I think, where if you find yourself in a place where you can't leave that job yet,
Yeah.
and you're stuck there, or your boss isn't moving along quickly enough into
Yeah.
a different department or whatever, you're going to have to find ways to just allow your own system, whether that be prayer and meditation or finding a hypnotherapist so that you can have some different words that are, put into your subconscious that you can go to, take up whatever, tap dance, Tai Chi, swimming, something that will just music therapy, even that, just something, art. If you have some art an artist in you that hasn't come up yet, allow that to start coming up. If you're a writer and you've been suppressing it, start doing that. There's so many things that we don't think about that will help us deal with our life better. Plus, when we're dealing with ourself better, guess what we create? We create an environment that is much more suitable to that.
Right.
All of this out here can be such a mirror for what's going on in here.
Absolutely.
And if it's turbulent out here, it's probably turbulent in here.
Absolutely.
Speaking from experience.
Yeah. I think we've all been there.
We're all in this boat together.
Yeah. It can easily get away from you.
Absolutely.
In this world, because there's so much going on all the time, and it's go, 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 go. And the expectation is to be busy.
Right.
Right.
And to be perfect while doing it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is so unrealistic.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just such an important component to health overall is that aspect of reducing stress and finding happiness and finding peace. And you can't do all the other stuff and expect the desired outcome you want when you're not taking care of that other piece.
Right. And what I have found too with a lot of people is when they start on the nutritional path and they start bringing better nutrition in, they just deal with stress and feel better overall.
Yeah.
So then they start making different choices, which then blossoms into, a lot of the different areas that maybe they were having issues with.
Right. It's got a synergistic.
They can find resolve with. Yeah.
It's got a synergistic effect.
Yep.
The things that you're doing to kind of feed your soul, then you're doing the stuff to feed your physical body.
That's
and it comes together to get to that point where you're just feeling good again.
Right. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Maria, for being on the Naturally Inspired podcast today.
Thank you.
I could talk to you for hours.
I know.
We could go on and on and on, and I'm sure we'll have you on again to talk about some more things that you're passionate about and your upcoming book that you're working on as well.
Thank you.
So,
I saw the wing.
So there's plenty more podcasts with Maria Boldry coming on the Naturally Inspired podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If the Naturally Inspired movement makes sense to you, let's do this together and transform the medical model and help people take charge of their health. Learn more about how you can join the Naturally Inspired movement by going to naturallyinspiredadvocate.com or call me at 970-475-4862.